So, welcome, Ashley. I'm so excited to have you. If you didn't know, you're one of the first people on the show, so you'll be in the first 5 episodes, which is really exciting.
That is super exciting.
Um, yeah, welcome. And if you don't mind just starting off, tell us who you are, what branch you joined, and how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely, sure. So I'm Ashley Jacobson. I'm the owner of Airborne Canine in Sanford, North Carolina. I did join the Army back in 2010, and I was in the military, active duty Army up until 2019. So just shy of 10 years. And when I was in, I was a intelligence analyst. It was an awesome job. I loved it. I did one deployment with the 82nd Airborne to Afghanistan back in 2012. I've served with a number of different units. I was in the 82nd, the 525, 3rd Special Forces Group, and I did spend some time as a military intelligence officer instructor out at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. So I got out in 2019. I was kind of right at that cusp where you kind of decide, do I want to stay in for the full 20 or is it time to get out?
Yep,
I
same.
had used all of my benefits while I was in. Like I got all the school I could. I got my master's degree while I was in the military. I used everything I could out of them, and then right around that time, I started to get, some injuries, and, a lot of the military stuff just wasn't as easy as it had been when I was younger. I did join a little bit later than most people did. So when I got out, I got 100% disability. So I was looking to do something I really enjoyed. I wasn't so worried about trying to make the ends meet right at the beginning. I did have that nice buffer of having that disability check. So I didn't have to worry about getting a good paying job right out of there. Um, but when I got out, I had two dogs, and I really loved doing stuff with my dogs. I spent all the time in the world playing with my dogs, training them to do all sorts of cool stuff. And, I had a dog who was having a lot of problems. He was a little bit aggressive. He, had bit a child, and it was like devastating for me. And that was how I first started getting involved in dog training because I need to help my dog and I need to fix this. So I ended up finding a dog trainer, trying to get some help. Unfortunately, they weren't really able to help me. So I went to another dog trainer, tried to get some help. They also really weren't able to help me. I spent a lot of money trying to get my dogs the help that he needed. Um, but ultimately, when I got out, it gave me the opportunity to use my GI Bill. And I went to the Star Mark Academy for Dog Trainers that's out in Texas. It is a 3-month dog training program. I was living there, sleeping there with my dogs, training all day, every day. It was grueling. I had someone ask me if I'd ever done anything in the military that was as challenging as my dog training school. And I could say it was very hard to think of anything that was really as challenging as that. So it was
Wow.
amazing. It was an awesome experience. I learned a ton. And they even set me up to be prepared to start my own business when I got out. So when I got out of dog training school, I was a little bit hesitant to really dive into business ownership because it was very intimidating. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. There's like the IRS, there's taxes, there's all this crazy stuff, and I don't really know how to navigate that. And I was afraid I was going to do something wrong and get in trouble or get the IRS after me or something crazy. So I worked for another dog trainer for a very short amount of time until I realized that it looked like business ownership was actually pretty easy. And so, after having a short stint working for someone else, I realized, you know what, I think I could do a better job. And so instead of staying there, I left and started my own business. And it was a little scary, but I think we're going to talk a lot today about the process of doing that. I can say that it was not as scary as I thought it was going to be. It was not as challenging as I thought it was going to be. There was definitely a lot of things that were hard about it, but I started my business in 2020, and we started out in my garage for a few months. Then we ended up getting a separate facility, and I had a staff of like 14 people. It was awesome, but I really didn't like having to be that manager as much. I really wanted to be more hands-on with the actual training process of our client dogs and working with the clients more. So we did downsize over the last year or so. So we're now down to a staff of just me and one other person. We are now, again, training out of my home. And it's wonderful. I did move to a larger property specifically for the business. And we've had hundreds and hundreds of clients. We've had great experiences, and it's been the first few years were really hard, but now it is so rewarding. And it is just, I would never go back to working for a paycheck again.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you started your business in the middle of the pandemic, I'm guessing? Or...
Right before, actually. So we started
Okay.
technically January of 2020. And then I think it was
Okay.
March when we went into lockdown.
Nice. So how did that affect you? I'm sure that that was an unexpected bump in the road as soon as you're picking up steam, right?
It was. I was really nervous that it was going to have a bigger impact on us. But we actually fell into the category in North Carolina as an essential business. So when you read through the regulations that they set and the restrictions for the essential businesses, they said if you could run your business while maintaining that 6 foot social distancing requirement, which we as dog trainers, we always set that 6 foot boundary between dogs. So we already kind of had that.
Yeah.
All of our payments and everything we did, through the app, through the internet. So we didn't have to like collect payment or collect any property to or from a person. We didn't have to interact with people hands on with the humans. So we were able to meet that category. We were able to stay open. We actually had an uptick during the pandemic because everyone was getting COVID puppies, meaning they were at home, they had nothing better to do, so they would go and adopt a puppy. And so we were actually getting a lot of clients through that process as well.
That's crazy. I didn't know everyone was buying dogs because you hear
Yeah,
about like
really a
COVID
lot.
babies, but COVID
Mhm.
puppies, I like that idea. So what kind of dogs do you have?
Oh, I have 7 dogs currently. Um,
Okay.
the first dog I had, he actually ended up passing away in 2020. He was about
Oh,
13 years old. He was a rough collie, and he's the one who got me started in all of it. He was perfect from the moment I got him. I got him from a shelter. I was so lucky to get this beautiful purebred dog who was friendly. He was social. He loved everybody. He never had a problem in his life, never had an accident, never ran away. He was wonderful. And that actually set me into this mentality that I was already a perfect dog trainer because I had this perfect dog.
yeah.
But then when I got my second dog, a German Shepherd, that's when I realized there's so much more to dog training. He's the one who ended up biting somebody because he's a German Shepherd. He was
Mhm.
fearful. He was high energy. He, didn't like people. And I didn't understand that some dogs just don't like people. And so I was trying to socialize him. I was trying to get people to pet him, trying to get him to interact during parties and gatherings. And it was just too much for him. And so since then, once I got into the dog training world, I took on a lot of shelter cases. So dogs in the shelter, dogs at rescues who were kind of having some issues getting adopted because they were fearful or they were aggressive. I'm like, let me try to help. And I would take them in, do some training, do some work, try to get them a little bit better so hopefully they can be more successful. And then I had 2 cases that were the worst cases. One was so fearful, like he was just the most fearful little dog. He was a Chihuahua.
Oh.
And like, yeah, he was great. Mind you, I have him still, which is where we're getting with this.
Aw.
But he ran away like the third day I had him because he was just so scared. And he wouldn't come to me because he was still afraid of me. And he was missing for like 2.5 days. And I was
Wow.
so distraught that I told myself if I ever find this dog, I'm going to keep him because I was so like heartbroken. And the I was on Fort Huachuca at the time. I was still in the military when I started kind of getting into this stuff. And the military police picked him up, and I went and picked him up from him. I'm like, I'm gonna keep him forever. And then there was another dog who was the most aggressive dog I have ever seen in my entire life. And there's no hope for him. We talk about behavior modification a lot in my field. Behavior modification is taking dogs who are like extremes and trying to modify them into something that's a little bit more manageable. For this dog, we've considered him just behavior acceptance. This is just the way he is. So he is an extreme bite risk. He will bite you. He tries to bite everybody. So we are just in management with him. But when I was in school, in dog training school, I asked, I'm like, hey, I know this dog, and he's like this. He's very aggressive. Is there a way to help him? And they told me yes. And so I was like, cool, I'm going to go get him and bring him to school so we can work with him while we're here. But they didn't really understand how severe his situation was. And so I ended up keeping him because I don't think he'd be successful in anyone else's home. And I understand the limitations of what he can do. So he's my other Chihuahua. So I have two Chihuahuas. A friend of mine had a German Shepherd who almost killed their other dog, and they were going to have her put down. And I said, well, before you do that, let me meet the dog. Maybe I can do something with her. They were newer owners, newer dog owners. They didn't really understand the process of dogs, the mentality. And so, they didn't understand why she had attacked the other dog. Once we talked, I understood what the issue was. She was just had a problem we call resource guarding. It's something that is treatable. It's something that's manageable. And I was like, I think I can help this dog. So they gave me the dog, and she has been wonderful ever since. This morning, when I woke up, I had her, my other super aggressive dog, and one of my younger dogs all sleeping on the bed together. And that would have been something that would have been unthinkable before I got her. So that's my other German Shepherd. She's wonderful. I have a pit bull. This is the dog that was assigned to me when I was in dog training school. You don't really get to pick your dog in dog training school. And so when they assigned me this little pitty, she was fine. She was great. She wasn't anything flashy. She wasn't anything exciting. I used to say that she walked around like Eeyore. She just kind of moseyed around.
Yeah.
And I like really exciting dogs. I like to do a lot of exciting stuff. But after I graduated school, you have the option to adopt a dog. And I chose not to. And I went to go start dog training professionally. And all the dogs I had at that point were all behavioral issues where they had problems where they weren't super reliable. And I missed just having that super reliable dog that I had in school. And so I ended up getting her adopted, and she's great. I still have her. She's getting older, but she's awesome. And then now I'm getting more into performance stuff. So you can see some of my achievements back here.
Yeah.
I love competing, and it's hard to compete with dogs who have problems. And so I started going to breeders. And so now I have a dog I got in 2021, a Dutch Shepherd, and he has the vast majority of the accomplishments up on the board here. And then I just got a second Dutch Shepherd from a breeder as well. And she is a wild child. And she is very intense, but she is going to be a force to be reckoned with out in the trial field. So I'm super excited for that.
So do you compete the dogs for like based on physique, or like I'm not sure what it's called, like the obstacle courses or at like athleticism?
So for the dog I got in 2021, he's the first purebred dog I got, and he's wonderful. He's super social. He's friendly. And so he's awesome because he can actually compete in just about everything. And that's really what I'm trying to do with him. So we've done confirmation. Cool. So confirmation is where the dogs kind of run around the ring. They look pretty, and the judge comes over and looks at them, and they say first place, second place, whatever. And we did try that. He did fine. He was about 1 year old at the time. He's very sensitive, though. He's a little bit what we call soft. So he's not really comfortable with certain things touching him certain ways. And so when the judge came up to examine him, they kind of touch their back, look at their teeth. And one of the parts that they do is they examine their underbits. And he was not comfortable with that. So,
poor guy.
Yeah, we have a beautiful picture of him kind of like jumping out of his skin as the judge kind of reaches under him. And I can't wait to have that framed and put it next to his ribbons and his signature. So,
poor guy.
We do a little bit of everything with him because he does dock diving where they jump off the dock into the pool. He does protection training. So protection training, he does a couple different sports in there. We call them PSA, which is the Protection Sports Association, which is one of the sports. And he does another sport called IGP. Those are the two most popular sports in the United States for protection training. We also do scent detection. We do AKC obedience. We do a lot of tricks. Tricks are super fun. I love doing those as well. So we do a lot of things with him. My other Dutch Shepherd, so she is a different line. So when it comes to like your working dogs, like your German Shepherds, Malinois, Dutch Shepherds, you have your like show line, which is what my first dog was. And then you have your working line, which is a little bit different because they're probably not like recognized by the AKC as a purebred. And quite honestly, they probably got some mix in them, but they're very much intended to do a job. Kind of like military working dogs or police dogs. They don't have to be pretty, but they have to be able to function effectively. And
Hmm.
these dogs are built to be very high drive, very tough, very like environmentally sound, meaning nothing's going to scare them. And this girl would run through a wall of fire, a brick building collapsing to the ground wouldn't phase her, and she is
Wow.
just a beast. But since she's not considered a purebred, we can't really do like conformation. She could
Hmm.
do a lot of the other sports as well. She does do dock diving, which is great. But the reason why I got her is because we're looking to be very competitive in an
I lost
extremely
you.
challenging sport. And that sport is called Protection Sports Association, PSA. And so we're kind of really trying to keep her focused in that because every time you do something different, it's going to cause some issues in your primary focus. So we do
Okay.
everything.
Very cool. I actually have a German Shepherd myself too.
You
She
do.
is, yeah, she's 5.5, and I got her from, I grew up in Ohio, so I got her when I first got stationed in Maryland and drove
Mhm.
all the way back to I grew up with German Shepherds, so I wanted her from the same breeder that my childhood German Shepherd was from. And they just did a great job at like breeding family oriented dogs. And
Good.
we had like the absolute best dog ever. Like our whole family was like had a 6 month mourning period when he passed,
Oh.
and it was but we have like really good memories of him.
Mhm.
um but so I know like breeders typically breed for like a purpose, right? And do you do the same for training, or are you kind is that less specialized and you can kind of do like whatever people want their dog to do? Did I hope that question made sense?
I think I know where you're going with this.
Okay.
For my clients who come in, the way I started my program, I wasn't as savvy about my clients as I wanted to be. So when I first started, I had this like mentality that everybody who came through my doors, who's willing to pay money for my services, was doing it because they were just so in love with doing stuff with their dog, like I was. But unfortunately, that wasn't so much the case. A lot of people are coming in because they're at wit's end. Oh, my dog is doing all this stuff, and I just need them to stop doing this.
Yeah.
So the vast majority of our clients kind of fall into this realm. I just need my dog to listen better. I just need my dog to, behave, pay attention to me, not be reactive, not to bark at dogs, not to jump on guests. So we do primarily focus on that. But one of the cool things that we do offer, which is different from a lot of other places, is that the benefits of having gone to dog training school is I have knowledge of all the different sports and activities. So we offer the
Hmm.
opportunity to get started if anyone is interested in doing scent detection, if anyone's interested in doing agility, if someone wants to try out tricks, if someone wants to try out protection training, we say, hey, you can try it here, right? And see if you like it. And then if you get to a point with us where it's beyond my skill set, because I can say that there are things that I'm not the highest level expert of, like I can get you started with tracking, but I am terrible at tracking. And so if someone wants to try it, we can talk about it, about what I know at least about it. And if they're
Hmm.
like, I really love doing this and I want to do it more, I'm going to say, great, here are the resources to go further with it. And I will kind of refer them out. And the same thing goes with any of those kind of specialized skills. So if someone comes in and wants to do something very specific with their dog, then we can definitely kind of get them started or at the very least point them in the right direction.
Yeah, that's very cool. Do you have like if you were to give one piece of advice to someone that's thinking about getting their first dog that was like a German Shepherd or something more like high energy, and like German Shepherds, correct me if I'm wrong, they need like a job kind of. Like
Mhm.
they need to feel like they are serving a purpose. Like if they have if they're getting a demanding dog like that, what's like the one piece of advice you would give them before they make the decision?
Well, I know that in most cases, if it's their first dog, a lot of breeders probably won't give them that dog. A lot of breeders who are breeding those high drive dogs might say we need, has to be someone who's experienced with the type of breed. But if they're, lucky enough to go get one and they say, hey, I'm going to get this high drive dog and I'm super excited about it, first I want to make sure that they're passionate about the fact that they're getting a high drive dog. We unfortunately do get a lot of like German Shepherd puppies in, and they say, yeah, I just want this dog to be a house dog. I just want this dog to be a couch potato. And, we talk about there are ways to get the opportunity to kind of sit on the couch with your dog, to get your dog to chill out with you. But there will be the need for the dog to be satisfied with mental activity, physical activity, and making sure that they're prepared to provide that to them, in addition to the process of conditioning that calm behavior inside the home. If our dogs don't have that outlet, and this can be applied to all dogs, honestly, then you're going to see, problematic behaviors. I always tell my clients, I'm like, I can't force you to do anything. I can't force you to put your dog in a crate when you go to the store. I can't force you to do this or that. What I can tell you is that the choices you make with your dog at home are going to have these potential or likely impacts. So if you don't work your dog, there's a potential your dog's going to develop anxiety, aggression, problematic behaviors, chewing on the couch, getting into the trash, chasing the cats, chasing the kids. And so if we can satiate those behaviors and put them either under control, give them the opportunity to get those out, then we can also create routines to have calm behaviors in certain environments, like in the home, at dinner time, when guests are coming over. And that way we can make it a very clear line between this is playtime and this is calm time.
Yeah.
That'd probably be the best thing I'd try to convey to them.
I was not ready for my dog when she was a puppy. Oh my gosh, so I crate trained her, and just the house training, and oh my gosh, it was a full-time job, and I was not expecting to feel like I had a child at home. And she is the best dog now, and but you do notice the difference, like you have to take her out and give her something to do, and after she gets her like walk and her playtime, then she'll be a little cuddle bug at home. But yep,
Yep. And a
totally
lot of people
understand.
think, that these dogs would just go outside and run them so I can either throw the frisbee or play fetch or whatever. But if we're not giving them like structured activities, all you're doing is creating a dog with more and more endurance to do things.
Yep.
And so even though you're throwing that ball for an hour, 2 hours, if you keep doing that, eventually you're going to need to do it for 3 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't recommend doing that. That's way too much for a dog. But
Yeah.
if you spend time doing activities like mental stimulation, tricks, training, puzzle games, whatever, you're going to see a lot more energy expelled in a much shorter time without having to sit out in
Okay.
the sun or exhaust your dog or potentially cause injuries or overexhaustion or anything like that.
Yeah, that's definitely something we've been struggling with. Is so in Maryland, like it's September and it's 95 today. Like it has been an extremely hot summer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like she does not do well in the heat.
Yep.
And she's lots of hair, and so we try to like take her outside for like 20 minutes to play and then bring her back in, and we'll pull on the rope or something with her. But
Yeah.
yeah, finding stuff to uh tire her out inside has been difficult for sure.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, again, just finding stuff that's, makes her think a little bit, you
Yeah.
know, just little tricks, anything that can make her try to learn something new, that's going to be super, super beneficial.
Cool. So let's go back to your military career. So why did you join in the first place? And then why did you pick the Army?
So I honestly, I hate this question. Why I joined.
Me too. Me too.
I feel like people are always expecting to say, "Oh, for love of God and country, and do my service," or whatever. Um, Honestly, when I was in my undergraduate, so I went to college before I joined. I was a music major, and so I
Oh,
did
cool.
classical music performance. Yeah, it was super
Okay.
fun. I loved it. Um, but I paid my way through school, like driving trucks, driving buses. I had a CDL, so I was working my way through school and I graduated and I realized that you really don't make a lot of money playing music. And so I realized I was going to be working my way through my career by driving trucks and driving buses, not really doing what I went to school for. Um, and so when I got out, I didn't really have a plan. I didn't have job opportunities necessarily. I was just going to be driving trucks. I'm like, I need to do something more than that. I had dated a guy that was in the military, and he was great and everything. He told me about it, and we ended up breaking up. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give it a shot. Right? The worst thing happens, I'm in for 3 years and I get out. And I joined and I went to basic training, and I was absolutely hooked. Like I couldn't get over how great it was. They told me what to wear. I don't really know how to dress myself, so I love. If you
Yeah.
on a daily basis, if you see me, I'm wearing like sweatpants and cargo shorts or something like that. I'm not a fancy dresser. So they told me what to wear, which was awesome. I got a free gym membership. The drill sergeants were basically my personal trainers. It was wonderful. It gave me an opportunity every day to achieve something, to be the best at something, or try to be the best at something. And I just kind of kept that mentality through my whole career. There was definitely ups and downs, but I just kind of joined on a whim, honestly, and it was great.
So in your basic training, were you in an I'm prior Navy, so I have brothers in the Army, but I don't remember the Army like terminology, but in your like group that you train with in basic training, was it all female or was it integrated male and female?
It was integrated. Yep, we had men
Okay.
and females, and we were separated in our sleeping areas.
Yeah, same. Okay.
Yep.
Do they have all female like training units for the Army for basic training? Do you know?
No, I don't believe so. And
Okay.
especially since they started integrating females into the combat MOSs,
Mhm.
even those areas are also integrated now.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, Navy is either all male or male and female, and we call them divisions, but yeah, there's no all female. I thought the Army did, so that's good to know. Um, so where did you go right after boot camp? What was your first duty station?
Well, after basic training, we had to go to AIT. So
Yep.
that's where we get our MOS. So that was out in Arizona, and that was 4 months long. And then after that, I graduated and I got stationed at Fort Bragg. And my first unit was the 525th Battlefield Surveillance Brigade. I don't know if they're still called that. I think they might be. Um, but it was an intel unit. I was only there for about less than 6 months. And I wasn't even doing intel stuff when I was there. I was working as a logistics person, helping out one of our logistics chiefs who was pregnant. Our unit was actually deployed at the time, so we had very minimal manning. Um, but then I got orders to the 82nd to go deploy with them. And so I got over to the 82nd, which was really cool. It was really hard. I did not like the 82nd. I never wanted to go back to the 82nd after I was done there. But I'm really glad I got that deployment experience there. So,
And then you said you deployed to Afghanistan?
yep. So I was in
And how
Afghanistan
was
for
that?
just over about 6 months because I deployed late. I think the unit was there for over a year, and it was great. I was doing intel analyst work. I was briefing a two-star general every week as a PFC or a specialist who was in the army for about 6 months,
Nice.
and it was amazing. Um, it was great.
Yeah, that's cool. And then so Fort Bragg is North Carolina, right?
That's correct.
Is that why you came back to North Carolina, or were you from there originally?
I never really left. So when I got back from deployment, I was having a little trouble with some PTSD, a little bit of depression, anxiety, and I found a place. I didn't have a place to live when I was deployed. So when I got back, I rented a house, and I was living in this house all by myself. And that was actually when I got my first dog. So about a week after I got back from deployment, I went and got my dog, my collie. I lived in that house that I rented for about a year, and I loved it so much. I loved the neighborhood that I ended up buying a house down the street.
Nice.
So once I bought
That's
that
awesome.
house, I was here. So even when I went to Arizona for a few months, I'd gotten married prior to that. My husband stayed here. I was out in Arizona for, I'm sorry, a couple years. He stayed in the house that I had here in North Carolina. And then when I got out of the army, I got out from Arizona and I just came back, stayed in my house. And that was when I started the business. And then I bought a property here. So the beauty of North Carolina, since since you asked why did I come back here or why am I still here after I got out of the
Hmm.
military, believe it or not, and I didn't know this when I was in the army, but like Central North Carolina, Fayetteville, Sanford, Fort Bragg area is honestly like the center of the universe for protection and competitive dog sports. So it just
Oh,
happened to be so lucky that I'm right here. So the sport that I'm competing in, the Protection Sports Association (PSA), the founder of the sport is literally 5 minutes from my house where I'm at now.
very
Um,
cool.
and for all the like, it's a newer sport. It's only been about 20 years that it's been around. There's in most of the country, there's very few places to practice and compete and trial, and we have what's called clubs. So there's very few clubs around. But here, there are 4 clubs within an hour's drive, give or take. Whereas in many states, like out in the Midwest, there's maybe one club for the whole state.
Wow.
Yeah. So this was the perfect place for my business. We're surrounded by dog people, dog enthusiasts. There's a lot of dog trainers around here, but that's never really been an issue because there's plenty of dogs to go around.
Yeah. I think that's something I learned kind of going off topic, but
Yeah.
starting a business is like you never, if you just focus on what you're doing and you love what you're doing, there's plenty of business to go around, even though there are a million other people doing the same thing as you.
Yep.
And it's pretty cool once you reach that like mindset.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is, I always try to think of it. I have no competition. There are 2 types of dog training businesses out there. There are the dog training businesses who are better than me, and there are the dog training businesses that are worse than me. And if they're worse than me, then they're not my competition. And if they're better than me, then they're just a resource I can leverage. I've
Yeah.
had dogs come in who I think were beyond my skill set, and I immediately referred them out. And I said, I don't think I'm the right fit for you, but this program is wonderful. There's this trainer, they have the resources that you need.
Yeah. No, that's a great mindset to have.
Mhm.
Um, I guess like wrapping up your military time, do you think that there are any specific either like challenges, obstacles, or even like advantages that you had being a woman specifically in the army?
Oh, absolutely. I think that being a female in the military has so many challenges that people don't really understand until you experience it. Um, it's it seems like when you're in the military and you're female, and honestly, this translates to a lot of like the dog sports too,
Hmm.
which is really weird, but
I'm
it
sure
does.
that's a male dominant field, right? Dog.
It's primarily female trainers and owners, but the
Okay.
tops of the field are mostly male.
Okay.
Yeah, and especially in like the protection training and working dogs is mostly male.
Okay.
But the issue I found is that it wasn't good enough to meet the standard. You had to be the top of the field in order to be considered a legitimate member of the organization. So like for PT, physical fitness, it didn't matter if you passed the test. For the female standard, you had to pass it at
Hmm.
the male standard or max out the PT test for you to be considered, an equal. Whereas on the male side, as long as the guys like passed their PT test, they were still one of the crew. They were still one of the group.
Yeah.
Um, and I found that to be the case for just about everything we did in the military. It wasn't good enough just to meet the standard. You had to be at the top of the field to be considered an equal.
No,
So
I
same
totally
thing
agree.
applies here.
What was the last thing you said?
Oh, the same thing applies in dog sports, I feel.
Yeah, I think it applies in most industries or wherever you work, but I felt like during my time in I was kind of under a microscope a little bit where I was definitely a high performer and I exceeded expectations in most of the things that I did, and but the second that I would slip one little thing, it was the end of the world. But the male peers that I had who weren't as high performing as me, it was just like standard for them to mess up. But then when I did, the repercussions were much worse. But
Absolutely. I saw that a lot as well. Um,
mhm.
It really, I we always have hardships, and it always sucks to go through those hardships, and it always sucks to be under that challenge. But the benefits that we get from it in the long run, it's unfortunate we have to go through that. But now, when I look at my peers, by my peers, I mean other individuals of the same age group as me who went through maybe military. I look at the males who have gotten out, and they struggle so much to be successful sometimes. They think it's so unfair when they have these challenges come up. But when we've been through so much harder stuff, that the challenges that we face, we're like, oh, this is easy. This is no
Yeah.
problem.
Hmm.
Um, if I screw up something, oh, big deal. I'm gonna get chewed out. I've been chewed out before, whatever.
Yep.
Whereas if someone like, someone who hasn't had that happen in the past and they get kind of called out for doing something wrong, they can take it so personally. And it's like, why?
Yeah.
It's not a big
No,
deal.
that's a good perspective to have. I think I don't know, a lot of people, not just men, but anyone leaving the military, they have a hard time like adjusting to this new way of life. And they have lived, especially retirees, they've lived and breathed for at least 20 years, so over half of their life probably, um the military and this structure, and like not picking out what to wear every day, and just something as simple as that. And you wake up at the same time, you PT 3 times, 5 times a week, whatever, and then you come out and there's no structure and you're on your own. And yeah.
Yep. It was, I knew someone during the pandemic who literally didn't go to work for almost the entire year. They never had to go into the office. They didn't really have to do anything. They just kind of hung out the house, right? And, unfortunately, it was someone who was living with me. So I got to see this every day. This is when, I was running my business. And, this is the whole purpose of this podcast is the service to CEO.
Hmm.
Cool. All right. I just want to make sure I remember the title. But,
Yep.
when, I just started my business, I was working 80 hours a week. The first month, like I didn't have a day off for the first year, give or take. And I was
Hmm.
working like from 5 a.m. until 11 p.m., like almost every day. It was brutal. And I would leave, and this person's sitting on the couch watching TV. I would come home, they're sitting on the couch watching TV, wearing the same things that they were wearing, and I left, their pajamas, whatever. And they were
Yeah.
active duty military. And they were higher ranking too. I think they were E7, and they were trying to get picked up for E8. And when the promotion board came out and their name wasn't on it, and they threw a hissy fit, I'm like, you haven't been to work in a year. Why on earth are they going to promote you? What are you doing with all this free time that you have? When I was an Intel analyst, there was no requirement for me to speak a foreign language. It wasn't required for my MOS. But, I was given the opportunity to take Arabic lessons for free through the military, but it was on my personal time. And anytime the military gave me the option to do something they were going to pay for, I jumped on it.
Yeah.
And so it baffles me how many people don't take advantage of the time that they have and the benefits that they have to get everything out of it that they can.
Yeah.
And I found that there was so many people who just, weren't taking advantage of these benefits, who weren't making the most of their time, who weren't trying to succeed. And then they were shocked when they weren't getting the promotions, who weren't getting, the schools that they wanted, who weren't getting the bonuses or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm just like, how do you not see you haven't done anything to earn this?
I know. It's coming to work and wearing the right uniform and being on time is the bare minimum, and you can do 20 years doing that, but you're not going to promote higher than what's expected.
Mm-hmm.
During the pandemic, we were working. I was an air traffic controller, so we couldn't not work. So we had a team and a B team, so that you couldn't come in contact. If you were on A side, you couldn't hang out with B side outside of work, and we'd work every other day. So you had every other day off to sit at home and do whatever you wanted. And that's when I started my business. I was like, heck yeah, that you guys just gave me half a year to work on this
Yep.
business. And I told my sailors, like, you guys have all of this free time. The Navy upped their tuition assistance allowance to, I think, 18 credits per year, which was pretty high.
That's
And I
awesome.
was like, you guys better take advantage of all of this free time that you have. If we come out of this pandemic and you did nothing to make yourself better, even if you're not working out with using your cooler as a bench press machine, like in your backyard, like you guys need to do something to not just sit at home all day during the pandemic. And yeah, I think people are just crazy for not. There's so much free stuff that, yeah, you have to do it on your off time, but what else are you going to do?
Yeah. And honestly, it translates to business ownership too, because
Hmm.
you'll have times that you're super busy, and then you'll have times that are a little bit slower. So we're actually a little bit slow right now. So on the days that I don't have a lot to do, I'm, writing my ads, I'm writing social media posts, I'm creating content, I'm reaching out to clients, I'm, trying to continue to always push forward with the time that I have available.
Hmm.
And if you don't do that, even though, when time is available, then you're going to find that you're going to really struggle kind of getting your clients and getting, the business to move forward.
Yeah. Um, okay, so since you brought up starting a business, when you realized that you wanted to branch off from you said the trainer that you were working for first, and then you wanted to start your own business, what were like the steps you took, or were there any specific like books you read, or, um, what knowledge did you take in to figure this out?
Oh, you froze a little bit there.
Oh, were you able to hear me?
Are you still there?
Yes. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yeah, I got you now. Okay, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was very lucky. Like I said, when I went to the dog training school, they kind of prepared us for starting a business. So they gave us the first few steps. And honestly, when I was in school and I was learning about it, like it meant nothing to me because I wasn't in the process of doing it.
Yeah.
And unless I'm in the process of actually doing it, that information just right over my head.
Yep.
So the first thing they said was like, you have to get an EIN, an employer identification number. I'm like, okay, it's a big long number with whatever. It doesn't mean anything. But at least when I was like, okay, I'm going to start my business, I know they said this was really important. So thankfully, I had my notebook from school. And I went in there and I said, okay, I need to get an EIN. What is that? Google. All right, EIN.
Yep.
Okay, I can do that. So I had an EIN. And next, I started making like a Facebook page, a website, all that sort of stuff. And I wanted to sell the products I was using. And when I wanted to sell a certain product, they're like, "Oh, yep, we just need your EIN." I'm like, "Okay," I give them that. Cool, you're all set up. Now you can be a dealer for these products. Awesome. And then there was another business I went to that I wanted to sell their products. They're like, "We need your EIN and your Secretary of State number." I'm like, "What is that?" Google. What is a Secretary of State number? How do I get one? And it was just this process of taking one challenge at a time. So the first thing I always tell people if you're going to start a business, I know it sounds like it doesn't have much meaning to it, but just get an employer identification number. Start there. Make a Facebook, make a website, and as you start to progress and as you want to do more things, you're going to meet challenges. And every time you meet a new challenge, just knock it out. So I said, hey, I need a Secretary of State number. How do I do it? I had to fill out a form. I had to print it out, which was like, can I do it online? But I had to print it out, mail a check
Yep.
to the Secretary of State for them to provide me this. I had to write up articles of organization or something like that. I can't remember what it was. It was a while ago. Um, and I was like, what is that? And I found a template. And they're like, yep, just put in your information here, mail it in. I'm like, okay. So, when I first got started, it just seemed so, huge and this big concept of running a business. But every time I met a challenge, you just kind of meet it, address it, complete it, and move on to the next challenge.
Hmm.
Um, and to this day, I still have stuff that comes up. I'm like, oh my God, how do I do this? Hit my Google machine. It tells me what I need to do, and then move on from there to the next challenge.
Yeah. I think, yeah, when I started mine, I was very scared and wanted to make sure that like I wasn't doing anything illegal. And my parents had ran businesses before, and they told me that, and learned it too, that like the government is actually fairly lenient to first, second year business owners, and they kind of know that like you're not going to have everything perfect. And even if you should have paid quarterly taxes and you only pay annual taxes your first year, it's okay as long as you give the government your money. Like,
Yep.
and that's a lesson that I'm still learning. Like this is my today is actually my final day in the military. I've been on terminal leave the past few weeks.
Oh,
Um,
congratulations.
Thank you. So now I'm like, okay, well, what do I have to do to make sure that, I don't know, the government knows the military's not paying me anymore, and taxes this year are going to be a nightmare. But I just know that like it doesn't have to be perfect. I just have to do it and give it my honest best effort. And
Mhm.
if you get audited, you're human. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Honestly, like everyone's so worried about the taxes. And the thing is, like, if you've ever been on the phone with the IRS, they are so nice.
Hmm.
They want to help you give them your money.
Yeah.
So that's what they want. And even if they owe you money, they want to help, make sure that that gets settled to a zero balance. I think learning about taxes is important, but not so much like, oh, form 1040, block A, B, whatever. That's not the important stuff. That stuff you can do through like TurboTax or whatever, and it
Hmm.
lays it out for you. I think the important thing to understand with taxes is how they impact you and your credit and things like that. So as I was starting my business, I read a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. And if you
Hmm.
haven't read it, I highly recommend it for anyone who's looking to start a business. It was one of the things that kind of really motivated me to start a business. And one of the reasons why I'll never go back to earning a paycheck again. But, I don't really want to pay a whole lot of taxes. The beauty of my field as a dog trainer is that all the things I do with my dogs, all the things I do for my dogs would be considered tax deductions because I use them for my work.
Yep.
And I was like, oh man, if I just deduct everything, I don't have to pay any taxes. This will be great. And so my first year I did that. I deducted everything I possibly could. I think I made after taxes like $5,000 maybe. So I didn't have to pay any taxes. It's great. The problem was when I went to go buy a house and they're like, you only made $5,000.
Yeah.
We can't give you a loan for a $300,000 house. Like, that's just not going to happen. I'm like, oh my God, I screwed up. And so the next few years, I did fewer deductions. I had to pay more in taxes, but it did give me the opportunity to get the loan I needed to get my house. I also had a lot of value in my previous house, which helped as well. But
Hmm.
understanding that those kind of concepts is going to be really important, and understanding what your long term goals are. So now, since I have the property I need, I'm not looking to make any big investments in the near few years. Now I can go back to deducting a whole lot and, making my earnings look as small as possible so that I don't have to pay as much in taxes. But, if I'm trying to take out a loan, I have to understand that that's probably going to be an impediment to that process. So
Hmm.
I think understanding the concepts of deductions and things like that is going to be really important. I would tell people that, start out as an LLC, but you're probably going to want to become an S Corp. I have not become an S Corp yet because trying to change from an LLC to an S Corp is a challenge I have not addressed yet. But I think there are a lot of tax benefits I've learned about that could be accomplished through becoming an S Corp. But just kind of understanding that. An LLC is super simple. You do all your taxes the exact same way, and it's not as scary as it sounds.
Yeah. Do you have an accountant that you work with, or a bookkeeper or anything, or do you do it all yourself?
I do it all myself because it's really not that hard. You just one step after the next with
Hmm.
TurboTax or any tax software. Like, it's going to walk you through the process. If you screw up something, it's going to tell you before you file. Um, so I found it pretty simple. Um, the only times I really like to pay other people to do services for me is if the process itself just takes more than it costs. So,
Hmm.
I always think about what I charge hourly. And if I can, pay someone else to do this faster, and it would cost me less than it would in my time, based on my
Mm-hmm.
hourly rate, then that's usually when I pay someone else to do it. Like I had someone build a fence for me. Could I build a fence? Sure, but it would take me twice as long, and I could
Yeah.
be training dogs during that time instead.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I've been looking into, well, I'm a wedding photographer, so trying to figure out what things to outsource. And that's a great rule of thumb. I actually just learned yesterday listening to who knows what podcast. I listened to like 30 of them, but um, saying that if you figure out what your hourly rate is and you can find someone to do it cheaper than your hourly rate, then it's probably worth it,
Yeah,
especially if it's going to be something that moves the needle in your business and actually helps you earn more money so that you have time to do something that will help you earn more money. Like you have more time to train dogs instead of build a fence. So,
exactly. Yeah, I love
um,
it.
do you have to have like special, like different insurance because you have animals on your property, or are there any like hoops you have to jump through for that?
No, I have to have just regular business insurance for my pet business, and it's just like having pets because my dogs are pets first. And so I just the government views them as so. I don't live inside city limits, so I'm not
Hmm.
regulated under the city ordinances. I'm outside of city limits, so I don't have like kennel laws and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, in North Carolina, getting a kennel license is actually very challenging. So if you can, get away from having to do that, it's really helpful. That being said, for dog trainers, there's not a lot of like regulations as far as what is required to become a dog trainer. Like I said, you can just get an EIN, make a website, and boom, you're a dog trainer. There's no requirement for school, licensing, anything like that, certifications. But that being said, there's a lot of questionable dog trainers out there. And
Hmm.
so we try to do our best to learn from their mistakes. So we keep our facility super clean, super well maintained. We have like redundant safety procedures for our dogs so that the dogs don't get loose, they don't get hurt, they don't get sick, they don't get injured, nothing bad happens to them because I've heard of so many like other dog trainers in the area who have ended up with dogs getting hurt, getting lost, getting injured, um, and even dying in their care. And, you know, if that ever happened, my career would be over. And I never want anything bad to happen to a dog. And so we try to make sure that we do everything we can to be of the highest level of safety, health, cleanliness, and training standards, even though it's not technically required.
Yeah. That's good. Um, when how did you get clients? Like in the, in 2020, pandemic's happening, people are scared to like leave their house. I don't know. Maryland was way more of a lockdown state than most, so I'm sure North Carolina might not have been as strict, but in Maryland, like no one could leave anywhere. So how did you navigate that? And then like just in general, beyond the pandemic, just getting more people to come to your business when there are hundreds of dog trainers in North Carolina.
It was really scary starting out in the very beginning. I thought, like, in my brain, I was going to, the website would go live and my phone would immediately start ringing. I thought
Yeah.
that was absolutely not the case. I think
Yeah.
it took me about a couple weeks before we got our first client, and they came in for like one private lesson for like $50. And then, like, they had a great time, but they didn't really come back. Um, and over the course of the first few weeks, we started getting progressively a couple more phone calls here and there. I started taking a lot of time learning about how to conduct my consultations. One, to make sure I'm getting, the clients are confident when they want to hire me, that I know what I'm doing. I'm not sure it gave the client the best warm and fuzzy when I told them, oh, you're my very first client. They're going to go, really? You've not been doing this for a long time? Am I really going to trust you with my dog?
Hmm.
Um, but I think as we started to go on, helping people understand, I know what I'm doing, and these are the things that I am going to be able to provide to you. Being able to be honest and open and things like that. The consultation was probably the most important thing I focus on because it's the first meeting with a client. The first time they get to see the facility, they get to meet me in person, and how I'm able to talk about myself in a way that helps them feel confident hiring me. In my like contracts and my liability waivers, and I talk them through kind of everything when we're signing everything. I put a lot of safety checks in there that help keep them safe. And I think they really appreciate that as well. Like I tell them like, listen, if you're not happy with the service, these are the ways that you're going to be reimbursed, right? If, you've done these things, this is the amount of money you're going to get back. If you're not happy, you don't want to continue, that's fine. Right? I don't want you to keep coming to me if you're not liking it, and I don't want you to leave here unhappy thinking I've swindled you out of your money. Um, and so I think that gives people a lot of like really good feelings, confidence working with me, that they feel safe. They don't feel like they're, risking anything. They're not risking their money because they know if they're not happy, they can always get their money back. But I have honestly had the least number of returns, either like it wasn't like the client was ever not happy. It was always, oh, my dog got sick, or we're moving away, we're PCSing, or whatever. The problem resolved itself. We don't really need the service anymore. And I say, okay, that's fine. Here, you can have your money back. This is fine. Not a big deal. Um, and so I think as I got more educated on how to talk to people, I read a lot of books. I read How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you haven't read that, I highly recommend it. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Sell or Be Sold, and The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Those would be the 4 books I would recommend for anyone who is going to be providing a service or trying to promote their business and get more clients. But as far as like advertising, Facebook, Instagram, social media, and then my website, I always promoted that. I also used a couple services for like lead generation in the beginning. But then once we were getting enough clients, I stopped paying for that because it was a little bit expensive. But in the beginning, I think it's important to build a bit of a client base. One, so you can start getting reviews, so you can start getting experience. And even though you're paying for it, I think it's going to be a good investment as far as those learning opportunities as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Um, for your website, did you contract that out? Did you make it yourself? And how do you blog or do anything like that too?
Yeah, I made it myself. Everything here, I almost never contract out anything. I do everything myself. So we do have a blog on our website. And once we started doing the podcast, I kind of moved away from the blog. We have a resource section on our website, which is a lot of how-to guides. I always tell people that, I have enough information on my website that you could literally go there, get the information for free, and train your own dog without ever having to call me. And if someone does that and someone takes all the information I provided to them and successfully achieves their training goals without ever needing to call me, I think that's a huge win.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's great because I know that they're going to be so happy that they're going to tell other people about me as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but most people aren't willing to go in there, read the how-to guides, because until they start doing it, a lot of it doesn't mean anything to them. And so once we start getting into the actual training portion, when a client signs with me, then those resources are just a supplement to the training we do. We also have a YouTube channel that we use for our clients. If you go to my YouTube channel, you're not going to see a whole lot. But what you don't see is that every single client gets multiple videos of their dog training that they can go back and reference. So
Oh,
if they go
cool.
home and kind of forget how to do something, they can watch that and see this is the way that you do it with your individual dog. And I think people really appreciate that as well.
That's
I like
really cool.
Yeah, I really like making it so that the client can work very independently. I don't want the client to feel like they have to always come back and rely on me to physically or, individually help them in the future. I want them to be able to go and be independent as they progress forward with their dogs. And one, that's going to help me because that way I don't have to continually provide more of my time to them, which is available for free. I provide lifetime services included in their program, so they don't have to keep paying extra every time they come back. But honestly, like Most people don't need to. Most people
Yeah.
are happy with what they have, or they're able to leverage those resources available to them.
That is so cool. I was going to say that you should start a YouTube channel with your trainings on it, but that
Mhm.
is like way beyond what I even thought of. So, do people have access to those videos like lifetime,
Mhm.
basically?
Yep. And every
Okay.
client gets access to their personal videos. No one else can see them, so they can't see their, no other people can see their dog if they can see their
Hmm.
challenges or when they make mistakes, because we include that. No dog is perfect. We're not perfect. So we
Yeah.
say, hey, if your dog makes this mistake, this is how you handle it. But I don't want everyone seeing their dog, making mistakes
Yeah.
or seeing their dog struggling through something. Um, but we do have, a lot of resources in our videos. I do a lot of videos too with my dogs up there. Like if a lot of these titles we did during the pandemic, so we were able to do them virtually. So we basically
Hmm.
had to create a YouTube video and then submit that in order to get like our trick titles and stuff like that. So those are
Okay. That's so cool.
yeah.
Well, I'm actually we're thinking about moving, and possibly North Carolina is at the top of the list. So if I ever make it my way over there, maybe I'll bring Kona, that's my dog, by for a visit. But that
Absolutely.
would
Yeah,
be
it'd be
cool.
great.
Um, so the last two questions I have that I plan on ending every podcast with is if you have any words of wisdom for women specifically joining the military, and then words of wisdom for women starting their own business. What are the main pieces of advice that you'd give?
So I guess for joining the military, be prepared for the challenges. I think sexism is still pretty prevalent in the military. Unfortunately, it just kind of is the way it is for now, but it doesn't mean that you have to accept it. I think it's important to always be professional in the military and in business as well, and know your stuff. So if someone's going to try and call you out on your uniform, make sure you know the regulation governing your wear and appearance of your uniform, and make sure you know what you're talking about. And if you know you're right, you're right. Don't let someone say, well, First Sergeant so and so told me that this was right. Well, too bad. Regulation says this.
Yep.
Um, and just knowing what's right and what's wrong. And even though your peers to your left and right are going to be probably slipping and sloppy and not holding the standard, it doesn't mean that you get to as well. I think it's important to always maintain a really high standard of conduct and behavior and appearance and all of that. And, have fun. Take time off, take a downtime, take a rest when you need it. Know your limitations. And I think the biggest issue I had in the military that I wish I could have gone back and done differently was my medical issues. Whenever I would go to the doc, the medic, whoever, I'd say, hey, I'm having this problem. And they would say, that's normal. And I go, oh, okay, I guess. I wouldn't be here if it was normal. Like, I understand what normal
Yeah.
is. Um, but I never was able to stand up for myself. And that's how, at 10 years in, the issues I'd been having got so bad that I just couldn't, like, at that point, there was irreparable damage. And that's why I got out, because there was no fixing it at that point.
Hmm.
So I wish I had kind of stood up for myself a little bit more. And it's hard because the medics are usually people who outrank you or they're officers. And it's hard to say, no, ma'am or sir, this is what the issue is. So I'd say, take care of yourself and make sure you stand up for your health needs. I think that's something that's very hard to do, but it's very important.
Oh, yeah. 100% agree.
Yeah. What was the second question?
Women starting a business, any advice to them?
Oh yeah, just do it. Just do it. Like,
Yeah.
the beauty of starting the business is that you're not working for anybody. You don't have anyone to answer to. It's just you. And even though it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, it's the most work I've ever had to do. It's so challenging. It's so time consuming in the beginning. It's liberating because I'm not answering to anybody, right?
Yeah.
I'm only holding myself accountable, and it's great. It's terrifying in the beginning, but now it's awesome because There are people who look up to me. There are people who admire me. There are people who listen to me. And I have the people I look up to. I have mentors. I have other successful business people. I have other successful trainers who I speak with. Um, and you get to a certain point in it where you realize like it's easy at this point. It's this
Yep.
is who I am. I don't have to answer to anybody. No one else is responsible for my paycheck other than me. No one else is responsible for my conduct. No one else is responsible for my business success. um, and it allows you to be faithful to yourself instead of trying to be loyal to an organization, to a business, to a boss, to a peer, to a paycheck. um, it allows you that freedom to just do what you need to do to be successful. And I think so many women struggle with having to fight for success, that once you take that leap, it's easy. And so
Yeah.
just do it. Just get started. Take the leap. The beginning is scary, but as long as you're doing all the right stuff and putting in the work, it's going to take off.
Yeah.
Whatever
The
you're doing.
hardest step is the first, right?
Yep. There was
Cool.
actually there was a a mentor of mine who does Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And he
Hmm.
said to me, he's like, for all the people who do Brazilian jiu-jitsu or martial arts, what is the most challenging belt to achieve? And you ask anybody, they're going to say black belt, right? Because that's the top belt. He goes, no, the white belt, the first belt.
Hmm.
Because the hardest thing to do is step into the ring for the first time, to get started. And it's absolutely so true. Because before you know it, like in business, before you know it, you're going to be successful. Before you know it,
Yep.
there are going to be people across the country who know about you. Like I had one of my employees ask me like, you know, how did you know you were like an experienced trainer? I'm like, I'm not. What are you talking about? Like, it still baffles me. But then I went to an event last night, and I roll up in my car, which I have my logo on the side of my car. And as I pull in, I've never been there before. I've never met any of these people before. Someone comes running up to my car and goes, Ashley. I'm like, how do you know me? And he's like, oh, I want to meet your dog. I'm like, how do you know my dog? Because my dog's name is Medic. Because I want to meet Medic. I'm like, okay. But it's crazy because you'll find in no time that your success and your reputation will begin to precede you, and people will know who
Hmm.
you are, and it sneaks up on you. So you never would have expected it in the beginning, but then as long as you just keep doing the right stuff and always try to do the right thing, do the best you can, it's going to be easy.
Yeah. I was minding my business, just wasting time in Target one day in like sweatpants and a hoodie, and some girl came up to me and she was like, "I love your photos." And I was like, "Oh my god, you know who I am?" Like it's just it just little things like that really do just you're like, "Wow, I'm putting in this work and people are starting to know who I am around here." It's crazy.
It
It's
sneaks up
That was
on
a
you.
really rewarding feeling.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Okay, so where do you want to share like where everyone can find you, all your website, socials, podcast, everything?
Oh yeah, I always forget about this stuff. Okay. Our website is www.airbornecanine.com. Thankfully, we're the only airborne canine ever, so it's
Nice.
very easy to find us. I also put a lot of work into our search engine stuff, so if you search for us, we should come up pretty easily. We have our
Okay.
Facebook page, so it's facebook.com/airborne canine. If you search for us on airborne Facebook, it's going to come up. We're the only one. We also have our Instagram. It's Airborne Canine. We got really lucky, so we got all the Airborne Canines, which is awesome.
Nice. Yeah.
Our podcast, we have, I think we're at episode 9. And so, it's starting to take off. We got a lot of listeners. We're still
Very
trying to
cool.
figure out like audio stuff. We just got a couple of microphones. We're still trying to figure out mixing. So some of the audio is a little bit, but the content is what you're there for. So bear with the audio and you'll
Yep.
find it's great. We start off every episode a little bit like formal. And then as we get more relaxed, it gets a little bit unhinged and more entertaining. So I definitely
Yeah.
recommend checking it out.
Cool.
We gear it towards everybody who has a dog, pet dogs, professional dogs, sport dogs, working dogs. We talk about generalities. So, if you enjoy dogs, it's called The Dog Dialectic. You can find it on Spotify. We also have a link to it on our website, airbornecanine.com. We have our YouTube channel, Airborne Canine, and I think that's probably about it. I think we had a couple others, but we kind of got rid of them. So those are the important ones.
Okay, very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I can talk about dogs all day, but I think we're going to end it here.
I love it. Thank you so much. It's been
Of
a huge
course.
pleasure. I would love to see your photos too. So, yeah, this would be great.
Yeah, I will send you some.
Awesome.